All right. So first of all, welcome everybody to this webinar on the evolution of social responsibility. There are a few people here that have not joined us yet or have not joined us before. So I'll quickly introduce myself as well. My name is Farida Al-Agami. I'm the general manager of the Tharawat Family Business Forum. And it's really a pleasure for us to have a fantastic session here today discussing how family businesses are literally building the future, especially in our region. And my two panelists today are Mr. Mohammed Hayy Saeed, who is a director at Hayy Saeed Annam Group from Yemen, and Mr. Omar Handal, who is Assets Management Executive at Al Handal International in Iraq. Both, of course, based both in Yemen and Iraq, but as well as in the rest of the region. And so today is supposed to be a very interactive session. We would like to encourage all of you to join in, to ask questions, to participate, and also to share your thoughts and your own experiences. So this session is for family business members only. And so of course we have a huge pool of knowledge and expertise amongst our attendees. So you have various ways that you can join us in the conversation today. The first way, the easy way, is of course to put a question in the Q&A field, and we will try to integrate that into the conversation. You can also raise your hand if you would like to speak. I can activate your voice and you can participate in the conversation directly and live. And of course, we would love for you to participate in our polls. Throughout the conversation, we will have probably 2 polls that we will ask you to contribute to get a sense of really what other family businesses are doing, what is the state of social responsibility with family firms in our region and beyond. So before we move to our conversation, we thought it would be good to frame the conversation a little bit, to give it a bit of context. And so I'd like to start by sharing just a few statistics that were found out by the St. Gallen University Center for Family Business. It's a Swiss university. And in 2016, they did a study of some of the largest family businesses globally. And so these statistics, we have to see them in that context. So this is a global trend. And what they found out, the global average, is that family businesses invest 3.1% of their wealth in social impact. However, they were also very clear that Middle East, Europe, and Asia are leading in this trend. And of course, I'd love to hear my panelists' point of view later on whether they think these numbers are realistic also for our region. Are we below this or are we above this? A couple of other points that I thought were interesting. This survey said that 60% of family businesses were said to have a foundation or another institutional vehicle of how they would work on their social impact. 50% said, and I found that very interesting, is that philanthropy was organized through the company. So quite an interesting number there. And only 15%, which I found very surprising, said that family members who are not active in the business are active in philanthropy. So in only 15% of the cases, non-management team members would be active in the philanthropic part of the business, which I think we can debate a little bit as well when it comes to our region, perhaps. So what is this evolution that we want to talk about today? And we thought in order to get a bit of a sense, a visualization of the topic that we are trying to cover today, for the best part of the 20th century, we can say that the family business and its social impact were clearly distinct. They were clearly separated. You have the family business, and then you have your philanthropic activities. Now, in the 1990s and the early 2000s, we suddenly saw that those two things started getting a little bit closer together. We had the emergence of CSR, we had a clarification of what philanthropy is, that philanthropy can be strategic and that it needs KPIs and that it needs to be organized in a different way. We had this emergence of impact investing. And so the question that we are asking with our two panelists today is, what's the next step? Are we seeing an even further convergence of what the family, the corporate side of the family business with the social impact side of the family business? So without any further ado, this is just to kind of frame the conversation a little bit so that we all agree what we are talking about today. But of course, the key point of our conversation today are the two panelists that I'm introducing, or that I would like them to introduce themselves now, because it really is, there are two examples of family businesses that I find personally some of the most inspiring examples when it comes to social impact. And for two reasons: because of the dedication and the long-term work that they have been doing as a family, but also because of the innovative approach that they have towards what social impact means. So I'd love for Mohammed to perhaps start off, and perhaps you can introduce your family business, yourself, of course, your family business, and some of the work that you have been doing from a social impact perspective.
Well, Farida, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to share our views. The topic is very close and dear to my heart, so very happy to share my views on that. Hi everyone, very happy to have you here. So my name is Mohammed Hal Saeed, and I am the co-founder of Muruj, a family, an organization that is that is based out in Yemen and is working on a fintech project that is very involved on impact investing. I also come from the Hal Saeed family, Yemen's leading and largest business that employs around 16,000 employees across the country, and is the founding entity of HSA Group, a family business that is employing 35,000 globally and is one of the largest family businesses in the Middle East. And through its 80 years history as HSA, it always adopted a values-led approach to sustainable growth. And it has, or the company and the family has been driven by the philosophy set by its founding fathers of doing well by doing good. And this has always driven the vision and the business operations throughout the business. There are three elements that we always focus on, is care, compassion, and community in all parts in which we serve. And then I think throughout this conversation, I would like to highlight that social impact is good business, and social business is actually good business, because I think we always get this notion of, social and looking after the people and the community is a philanthropic kind of work that can be done on the side. But I think it's actually good business, and it does drive financial performance. It does drive long-term sustainability to the business. So I'll hand it over to you, Farida.
Good afternoon to you, Farida and Mohammed, and to the audience. Thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure. My name is Omar. I'm a third rising generation in our diversified family business that was established by my great grandfather in the 1950s in Baghdad, capital of Iraq, with a real entrepreneurial spirit that he dropped school when he was on his 8th grade to help his father in living. And then he started working in different jobs, and then he started small businesses. That said, our family business is working in 4 sectors. First is banking. Our group is a major shareholder in Ashur International Bank. It's a retail bank in Iraq. We also Emirates Airlines partners in Iraq since 2010. We are their exclusive general sales agent. Thirdly, we are into real estate development. We are building 4 residential projects in Iraq in 4 cities. 2 of them is for low and medium income people. And lastly is retail and hospitality division. We started our own gym chain. It's called the Wolf Gym. We also inventing our first organic restaurant that gets the supply from our organic farm that it's run by our team. And I am assigned as assets management executive in our organization, and I'm a co-founder at the Station Foundation for Entrepreneurship. It's the first co-working space that was funded by our group in 2018 in Baghdad. It specializes in capacity building and empowering youth and graduates in order to rely on themselves in terms of entrepreneurship, as starting their own projects or getting enrolled in the private sector.
Excellent. Thank you so much, both of you. I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into really the social impact that your family businesses are having. And I'd like to do that in two ways. First of all, I'd like to understand the actual projects that you are running as a family business, and also understand a little bit where the vision or the drive comes from that made you do these projects or work on these projects. Of course, we are very aware that you are both from countries that have exceptional challenges. And so it would be interesting maybe if you could contextualize that a little bit also within the framework of the countries that you operate in and that you're active in. Perhaps Mohammed, would you like to start on that?
Yeah. So I think the desire to serve communities is an integral role to social responsibility. So always thinking about the communities is very important in any of the engagements that we do. So there are two projects that I personally am part of. One is the international initiative on COVID-19 in Yemen. And I can talk a little bit about how we as a family business are responding to such pandemic into the country. And then there is another project that I'm also leading, which is a financial technology project. So you tell me which one is interesting to you.
Well, I think they're both interesting, and I'm not going to choose. So maybe you can give us a very short brief on both of them without, of course, taking away from their importance.
Yeah. I mean, the situation in Yemen is very, very difficult. It is the world's worst humanitarian crisis. 80% of the population are in dire need of some sort of humanitarian assistance. Yemen was already fighting a cholera outbreak before COVID-19, which affected 2 million lives in the country. And so this pandemic presents a further threat to the lives of millions of people. And so as a private sector, as a family business, we believe that there is a role that the private sector can play in such humanitarian disaster. And what we've done is we took a very innovative approach to helping this humanitarian relief. And what we did is we reached out to our strategic partners that have been working with HSA and told them, listen, the country is facing humanitarian disaster. COVID-19 presents a further threat. Let's come together and work towards this. And so we've established the International Initiative on COVID-19 in Yemen, which consists of HSA, Unilever, Tetra Pak, the private sector cluster, as well as the Federation of Commerce in Yemen, and as well as the WHO and UN, in a desire to prepare the country for a response. It has been great. And I think the key learning from this is it's not anymore about working alone and trying to do a social impact alone. It's more of partnership-led models and more innovative ways onto tackling social and community issues. So COVID-19 was a major thing. Today, as we speak, a first plane has landed into Sana'a. We have another 3 planes that will be landing throughout the week. The biggest shipment into the country, 43 tons. So it's an amazing initiative led by the private sector, and yet another example to serving the communities.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And perhaps some words on your fintech project as well.
Yeah, so the fintech project is something I'm very, very excited about. We've started that 2 years ago, and the main driver for that is that the people in Yemen don't have access to financial services. It's 93% that don't have access to financial services. And what that basically means is that they don't have ways to save money, they cannot grow their business, and they don't have access to that. And so what we said is this needs to change, and we need to give access to people to work on these financial services. And so we started a mobile money project in Yemen, which we will allow 70% of the people to use their phone just like a bank in their pocket, and basically use it for everything from bill payments to running their businesses to paying their goods. And I think this presents the notion of helping the community from a social perspective, empowering people, but absolutely make money out of it. So it's interlinked, and it's not one versus the other. It's not either or. It's two things working together, making money, but also helping the community and the society at large.
So kind of that project would be kind of at the last stage of the model that we presented in the beginning, where kind of the impact, social impact, and the business overlap to a certain extent.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I feel that's the future.
Interesting. And of course, this is debatable. I mean, we'd like to also invite our audience, if you agree, disagree with kind of that theory that we are presenting here, we'd love to hear from you, because we know that, and I know most of you who are on the call, that I know everybody is doing amazing projects of their own. And so please, talk to us. This is kind of what Tharawat is about, is to have a conversation amongst family businesses. Omar, what I love about one of your main projects at the moment, which is the station, is that it kind of is very much part of the entrepreneurial spirit of your family. And it feels like a natural extension of what you have done. Can you talk a little bit about the station and where the idea came from and what the motivation was behind it?
Well, definitely. I mean, I would like to touch point on what Mohammed said. Unfortunately, Yemen and Iraq, in particular, one of the richest countries in the region, and with the heritage and history, we see these numbers. I mean, our population is 40 million, and we got 12 million living under poverty line, which is $2 per day. Can you imagine this number? And the median age is 20 years old. So main age, the average age is youth that we have in particular back home. And what we see, I mean, from our perspective, is the need for these youth to get enrolled in a proper jobs that they would make a living out of it, and they can survive and help their families and live their own dreams. So we have almost 500,000 yearly people that graduate from universities to enroll in the public sector. And unfortunately, with our corrupted government, it's been more than 16 years so far with this corruption and all this decline growth rates that we have, we came up with something to empower people in order to rely on themselves, can start their own projects perhaps, or they can be empowered in order to enroll in the private sector. Having said that, we have the entrepreneurial spirit. It is embodied in generations. So from my great grandfather, that is until today, we get mentored by him, and my father and uncles, that this kind of CSR work, it is actually cascaded from generation to a generation. And the reason that the station came and been funded from our group, it's one of the reasons or the pillars that our group is having it as a core value. So with this, I mean, we have seen a significant change with thousands of entrepreneurs, from boys and girls, that they came through these 2 years that we opened, and now we actually expanding to another city and opening over there, so we'll be able to reach more of in a need. Yeah.
Well, I think this is, so first of all, thank you for doing this. I think it's in the service of the entire region. Of course, both of your projects will have a spillover effect across the borders. So I think this is a fantastic idea to take also the spirit. And in both of your projects, I see that there is this link between the culture and the values of the family, and it spills over into the project. So you have not detached the projects from who you are, you've really integrated that very, very nicely. I'd like to go to our first poll, actually. And because we would like to ask our great audience that is with us today, how your family business mainly contributes to the community. So what does your social impact look like? So I'll launch a poll now. It will come up on your screen, and I'll give you a minute or two to answer. So you should be seeing the poll on your screen now, and I'll give you a few minutes. So how does your family business mainly contribute to the community? Do you have a foundation? Do you mainly engage in CSR? Is it charity, the traditional form of charity? Waqf? Do you fund non-for-profit organizations? Do you engage in impact investing? Or are there even other forms that we haven't thought about? So I'll just give you one more minute to vote. Okay. People are still deciding. And of course, we are very much aware that many families have many of these forms. So most of the family businesses that we know, of course, will have a foundation and CSR, or non-for-profit organizations and charity. But let's look at what you're mainly focusing on at the moment, or what your main impact is. All right, let me end this. And here are the results. So you'll see the results on your screen, which is very interesting. So foundation is kind of the leading. So most people say that they have a foundation, 26%. Then we have followed by 21% the charity, so the traditional charity behavior, 16% both for Waqf and impact investing. And then we have 11% non-for-profit organizations and 5% even other forms. So I think this is a very interesting kind of insight into how diverse social impact is, and how family businesses go at it from very, very different perspectives. So coming back to your project, what I wanted to ask, there's been a question from the audience asking what some of the biggest challenges were and some of the resistance that you have faced in building those projects. And perhaps that resistance could be internal as well as external. So maybe you could discuss that a little bit. And Omar, I'll start with you, because perhaps you could just explain to the audience. I'm also getting WhatsApp messages, so I'm being bombarded from everywhere. Maybe you can explain a little bit more what the station does exactly. Like, is it an incubator? Is it an accelerator? Just some more detail, and then maybe we can go into that question of
Sure. So the station, actually, it's a co-working space with co-working space, like offices, plus an event hall, plus meeting rooms and training centers. So what actually we do in the station is any individual or entrepreneur that having the will, or they have their own project, they would come and rent a space in the station, and in there they can meet with like-minded people. And we do as well mentoring programs for all the individuals and the entrepreneurs over there. We have done a lot of competitions as well. And another initiative that was launched by our group, recently, it's equivalent to $5 million in help and stimulus for all the startups, in particular in the station and abroad in all Iraq, that they would need any help or push. We would give them a loan in these hard times due to the COVID-19, and we've got a lot of requests towards that. So I mean, this is mainly the station mission and what we do exactly inside it. Yeah.
Perfect, great. And so what were some of the obstacles that you faced in setting this up?
Definitely. Well, the first thing, I mean, it's one of a kind in Iraq back in the days, and no one knew what with co-working space means in 2018. So whenever we explained the idea to the board, then we're like, we're coming up with the idea of having such a place in Baghdad that would be having this kind of facilities. So it was hard to convince, first of all, our board of directors in the organization. Plus, when it got launched in the beginning, we had to do a lot of awareness campaigns, a lot of things that this is the place, this is the right environment for a graduate or entrepreneur to come and get inspired and get like the support that is needed. Yeah. So yeah, this is mainly the kind of obstacles that was in the beginning, and we overcome it.
So you had to basically re-educate some people to understand, or educate, not re-educate, educate some people around this concept to understand what it would do and what the impact would be.
Right. And I'll be very frankly with you and with the audience, such a kind of project. I mean, when you look at it, mainly an organization would look at the ROI. I mean, that what can this project can bring to us. And for us, what we successfully convinced such kind of thing, it won't be a return on investment that we will looking at. It will be a return on value and return on learning that we will get into these people. And it really resonated with the board at the time when we had the first initial conversations.
Very interesting. So again, kind of that convergence of these two spaces in a way. Mohammed, any comments on, and I'm sure, I mean, you probably have like 5 hours of stories about your COVID project, but I remember you also had a very interesting, very similar in a way to Omar's story about having to explain what you're trying to do. So with your fintech project, so maybe we can start with that and what the hurdles were internally and externally.
Sure. So it's generational dynamics. You come with a fintech project with technology, and internally you try to explain this fintech and the technicalities around it and infrastructure and so on. And then you have your father and uncles who are trying to get their heads around it, and they're not very up to date maybe with the fast moving technology. So you need to sometimes take it very slow and repeat yourself twice and thrice until you explain the thing. But I think what's very important in such situations is we focus on the purpose, because there is a purpose that is very embedded within the family organization. And then we tie this project on how it will serve our purpose and how we can move forward with our objectives. And then secondly, some people, there is the fear of being left out with change, and we need to catch up and we need to get ahead. And so I think what we're doing with this fintech project is catching up and keeping up and even getting ahead in the game while making money and also serving the people. So I think 3 things coming together is something that is took us time to explain and convince, but alhamdulillah, we got through it. And then you have external dynamics. So obviously operating in a conflict zone and implementing such a project in a conflict zone is very, very difficult. So trying to deal with multiple stakeholders, with multiple parties, convincing them and so on has been tedious. But alhamdulillah, we've been advancing, and I think we will keep moving forward into serving the people.
Fantastic. So I think we'll move to our second poll, just because, again, I'd love to see what our audience thinks. And this is a question, Mohammed, that you sent, that you wanted to ask, which asks kind of what areas we are focusing on. So of course, when we talk about social impact could be anywhere. And so the question that we're asking, and I'm going to put up the poll so that you have some time to answer it, is which ESG initiatives, so that's environmental, social, and governance, are the most important in strategic planning discussions in your business? So what areas do you mostly focus on when you look at your social impact? So choose the 2 most important areas that you are looking at, and I'll give you some time to do so. So we have the choice between education, public health, environment, infrastructure, humanitarian and disaster relief, or perhaps we might have left out a few options. Of course, there are a lot of other topics that family businesses are engaged in. And I actually don't know if the 2 of you agree. I have a theory of which one is going to win, and you cannot see the results. So I'd like to take a little bit of a feeler here. Which one do you think is going to be the most important one?
For me, I would say education.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll go for education.
Education as well. All right. Okay. So let me pull up the poll and share the results. Well, you're both spot on. So with actually quite a large majority, we have education with 79% of the attendees saying that when they talk about social impact, they look mostly at education. Then we have the next one is humanitarian and disaster relief with 37%. Of course, here we have to be careful. You were able to take 2 choices. So that's why the statistics are not up to 100%. Then we have public health, 32%, the environment and infrastructure, both 16%, and then we even have other topics that people are looking at. So thank you very much to the audience for participating in this. Going forward, I'd like to talk a little bit about why family businesses behave this way. And I'd like to look a little bit at legacy and values that inform your decision making. So perhaps we can start with Mohammed on where do you think this motivation comes from? Because I know quite a few family members of yours. There's a lot to know. I know quite a few of them, and it feels like everybody has a very similar drive and a very similar ethical approach to this. So can you explain to us a little bit where this comes from, you think?
Absolutely. So I think in my opinion, and this is very debatable, is a family business or a business that is purpose driven in terms of its culture and investment. It starts with the founder. Mm-hmm. And what's very, very, I think, challenging for a lot of family businesses, but also corporates, is that if the founder end up leaving the business or passing away, how do you keep the same purpose driven within the organizational DNA? I think that's a very tough thing, especially when the business continues to grow, the family continue to grow, and with globalization and all this is how do you keep true to the values of the founder? And I think what we've done perfectly throughout this 80 years history is we continue to emphasize these values, and not just by communication, which plays a major role, but also through rewards and prices and making strategic decisions against these purpose. And I think to staying true to those values will always grow the business. Mm-hmm. But again, the values stay still, but the way you execute and come up with new innovative ideas will always change as we evolve. And I think we kept with that change.
Exactly. So the why, in a way, if I don't know if anyone knows Simon Sinek, probably we all know Simon Sinek, but so kind of the why stays the same, but the how and the what changes. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Okay, perfect. So Omar, how is that for you? Because every time I speak to you, there is this very clear sense of heritage that you talk about. So can you tell us a little bit about how maybe the founder has influenced, your ethos in your work?
Sure. I mean, I totally agree with the purpose-driven, as Mohammed said, and from our side, it's a mission-driven organization. And as I have mentioned earlier, from our founder, my grandfather, that he embodied the charity, philanthropy, CSR in his daily work with building mosques. I mean, a lot of different stuff. And what happened is, from generation to generation, we could have developed this into reaching a bigger bigger audience or bigger exposure, like having the station and having other non-profit NGOs that we also running in our organization. That means a lot. And I'll just share with you a very small example. I mean, we all know the SDGs 17 goals, which is like sustainable and vision of the UN 2030, and the fourth point is the quality of education in their goals. And what we did recently, the last 3 months, so what happened back home is everyone sitting at home, university students sitting at home, not being able to go to universities and not being able eventually to finish their material and their curriculum. So we started negotiating and getting an agreement with one of the top leading learning platforms all over the world. It has more than 53 million active users with the top ranked universities, in order to get them to Iraq, and the students can study their courses through that platform, and then they will be able to get an elective courses from Yale University, Stanford, or other top ranked universities. So it will be like a kind of a blended education. So all of these values that we have, and it's like shared values that from the great grandfather and for the second generation and for us as well. So from that, we always sharing that, and we always like what embodied, we work from there. Yeah.
Fantastic. So I'm getting a lot of questions from all over the place. One question that I find very interesting relates actually to technology. Because traditionally, when we look at kind of philanthropy and charity, especially let's say in the best part of the 20th century, you know, people would build a school or they would build a hospital, you know, kind of a classic sense of setting up something that benefits the community. Today, of course, technology is a way to solve problems. It's a way to change behavior in a certain community. And I think the question that we got is, will it become almost part of social responsibility to develop technologies that are adapted to our regional needs? Because one of the problems we have in our region is that most of the technology, and especially technology platforms, are imported from outside. So they are not always adapted to the needs and the actual realities of the local population. So I'd love, maybe Mohammed, maybe you can start commenting on that.
Yeah, definitely. So I think I mean, a big part of social responsibility is not only about adapting to the technology we have in place, but it's about innovating and creating. And I think a big part of that social is investing money and resources to develop breakthrough innovations or whatever types of innovation. So it's not only about embedding technology within the system or within the organization to solve your own current problems, but a big part of social investing is trying to solve big problems the world is facing. I mean, food security is a big issue the world is facing. So how can we invest in technology that will help mitigate food security? Poverty is another big issue the world is facing. Tens of thousands of people dying every single day of poverty. Do we adopt technology or do we invest in technology and innovation? So I think R&D plays a major role. And I think what HSA has done, just a very quick example, is with the humanitarian disaster in Yemen, with the famine affecting lives of millions of people in Yemen, what they have done is they started, because we produce a lot of food stuff into the country. And so what we said is immunity is down. People are not getting the supplements they need and the vitamins. So we started including as part of the ingredients, more vitamins and more supplements in order to distribute. So now this was a simple innovation that we have done in our packaging and our products manufacturing. But I think a bigger role is investing in R&D to solving the world's biggest problems.
I think that's a very, very strong point. Omar, there's a question that is directed at you and kind of the work you've done in your field, but also you mentioned you had to obviously present the idea of the station to the board, right? And you had to explain this difference between return on investment and return on value or return on impact, perhaps. And the question is how do you measure? How do you make sure that there is that return? So what have you done to make sure that there are certain metrics in place? And do you feel maybe also as an inspiration to some of the people on the call, you know, who perhaps would like to bring on board innovative new projects? How do you convince, you know, with this type of project?
Very good question. Thank you very much for asking this. So I would just share something. I mean, as even Mohammed mentioned, what's happening in Yemen and all these disasters, we had a huge invasion from ISIS in 2014, and people were joining it, especially from Iraq, for no belief in ISIS, but it was the ignorance and the poverty that made them. So they would just give them $1,000 and they would like, go bomb yourself, literally in this way. And people would just take this $1,000 and they would go because they have nothing to lose. So what we did is killing the ignorance, or taking off the ignorance, the return on value and the return on learning that I have mentioned through our foundation. It's been a critical change and a paradigm shift that we have succeeded within these 2 years, that we already had the infrastructure before the station. That's what we were doing through our bank and through our group as like very minor initiatives with the IDPs, which is internally displaced people. There were more than 7 million IDPs in Iraq because of ISIS and what they did to them. So we used to go to the UN refugee camps, see what they need. We can empower them if they're eligible for like getting to start their own like a small project, empower them with social skills. So we had this shift from very minor initiatives to a place that is all under one roof, that we can get the exposure to all of people. So from my side is, as I said, whoever asked the question is, of course, difficulty is there. And what we had, of course, it always goes to your why, as we have mentioned, and why we're doing this. So our why was these kind of things, and what we saw and what we suffered actually from the people that were there, and that people didn't have anything and they didn't have any belief. So by having this initiative and by changing radically the thoughts and the way they were thinking of things and seeing things, it really helped, because many of initiatives reached to Al-Mosul, which was invaded by ISIS, and have reached to that people that they were like, before ISIS, like in that days, like they were related to them, and then we have changed this into a normal human being that can rely on himself. And last example, sorry to mention, is by empowering people with the right knowledge, with the right training skills. So Omar would come and he might be able to open a mini market. So with opening a mini market, I would get people like to work for me. So I would be creating jobs. So in a way that I get Omar started with a job and he created other jobs. It is like the ripple effect. So it gets in a positive way in the community.
Well, perhaps maybe to start slowly closing off our conversation, I'd like to address two main points. The first one, I'd like to talk a little bit about the importance of collaboration in the area of social impact. And then the second point that I'd like to talk about is some learning points that you could share with our audience from all the things that you have been through and that you are probably still expecting that you will have to face. So let's start off with collaboration. And I think I'll start with Mohammed, because of course your COVID initiative is pure collaboration. So do you think collaboration will be also a way going forward for you and your family to amplify perhaps the impact that you want to have?
Yeah, definitely. I think to solving major problems, whether in Yemen or anywhere across the world, partnership-led models is the way forward. Building a coalition around a certain topic or a certain issue is the way forward. We've done that in the COVID case. We managed to get the partners to come together, leveraging our long-term strategic partnerships with multinationals that we've been building throughout the 80 years. These people stood up when we asked them to come and stand up with Yemen. They're investing. We're working on not only supplying the country, but also learning from each other in terms of knowledge and expertise and so on. So I think a more collaborative approach is very, very important to solving. There is an Arabic saying that says, "يد واحدة ما تسفعش," one hand doesn't clap. And so I think working together collaboratively to solving major issues is the way forward. This is not only true to the COVID example, but it's also true to the FinTech project. The FinTech project does not only involve us, it also involves the largest 12 banks in the country. So again, it's a more collaborative approach to tackling a problem. And I don't think governments will be able to solve the world's biggest problem anymore. It's the private sector acknowledging that they have a bigger role to play and taking responsibility into solving these issues.
I mean, thank you for that. I think that's also something we've observed in Tharawat, is whenever we bring people together, and if you bring people together with a similar mindset who are doers and who are value driven, you just need to connect and you need to find the right way to bring your resources together, click them into a system, and then actually you can amplify. And we've seen some examples actually coming out of Tharawat that are quite impressive, where people collaborated. Omar, how do you see the perspective on collaboration?
Well, you know, the 17th goal in the SDG is partnership for the goals. So it is one of the crucial points that you have touched point on. And going back on the question of technology and how to leverage it, I mean, in 2013, we had seen 7 billion devices connected to the internet. And nowadays, it's more than 50 billion devices. So I would say it's more of the impact that like we come up with. In terms of collaboration, as I have mentioned earlier with what we've been doing with the e-learning platform, this would have an impact more than, I would say, roughly 700,000 people, because it would reach all the university students and the people who would not able to have like a university education. They can as well enroll and can get courses to leverage their core competencies, and they can work on themselves through the internet and through their devices.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for those points. So to kind of slowly close off our conversation, let's get to this point of kind of sharing perhaps some of your learnings. Maybe what would you recommend if someone in the audience is looking at creating social impact projects going forward? Someone who is also looking at perhaps their infrastructure that they currently have, you know, because you can do so much with what already exists. How can you amplify your impact? So maybe some of the takeaways and learning points that you can share with us.
Sure. I would just ask the audience, why should I even align with an SDG? So like anyone of the audience would ask themselves, it's simply, is business cannot thrive in a world of inequality, poverty, and environmental stress. So each individual of us, each organization, and now here it's mainly a family businesses, aligning our goals, our mission and vision, simply with the SDG 17 goals. I wouldn't say the 17th goals at the one time. Maybe having the equality of education. The number one is no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being. So each one of these points that maybe we can put as in a roadmap, and then we can have a KPI, and then we can announce to public that, okay, we are aligned with the SDG, and then you can see other organizations that they are working with the SDG as well, then you can collaborate with them into a better world and under their code, which is leaving no one behind.
Well, thank you so much for that, Omar. I think also, please use Tharawat. I mean, this is why we have this organization. It's exactly to bring people together who have similar vision and similar values. So if there's anyone in the audience today that would like to connect on this topic, I mean, these two gentlemen are absolutely fantastic, and you know, I think have a lot of know-how and insights to share. And perhaps even there is an opportunity to connect even further and to create some type of collaboration for the future. So thank you for that, Omar. Mohammed, any final points from your side?
Yes, I mean, the truth is change is very tough for well-established businesses, corporates or family businesses. And trying to embed a more purposeful-led strategies in this time is not a walk in the park. It's difficult, but I think if you have the desire to do it, you're going to do it. And I think at the end of the day, a business that cares about the social impact is a business that cares about people, both employees and the communities in which they serve in. And so I think very, very importantly is to start internally, looking at your employees, because these people are the ones who serve communities. They're the ones who are driving your business strategy, and they're the ones who are executing. So I think, I mean, from my own experience, it's not a right or wrong answer, but the easy way to start is internally, is to look after your employees and embedding that purpose led into the organization through the employees.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to have to slowly close this conversation. I could go on for hours. I think it's fascinating what you both are doing. I think just to maybe summarize a little bit that, you know, this theory that we've started out with of saying, you know what, perhaps there is a new model emerging. We are definitely not saying, I think none of us, the three of us, is saying that the classical model will disappear. On the contrary, I think people are actually doing a fantastic job in strengthening philanthropy, making sure that their foundations are well structured, well organized, have KPIs, etc. So that's a fantastic development, but also that there is innovation, that there are different ways of looking at purpose, that are looking at you know, going forward into a next space. I think my first task is, of course, to thank you both. I have to say, I'm really, I've been waiting for this webinar to happen on a personal level, because I think what you are doing, what your families are doing, especially in a time that is really tough for many people, is an inspiration. It gives us hope. It gives us a sense of belonging. So I'd like to really thank you both very much for the hard work you're doing. And please continue sharing with us. Tharawat is your home, so please feel free to always you know, come back to us and share with us your progress.
Thank you, Farida. Just a closing note from my side is, we started this conversation saying that social business is good business. And I truly believe that social business is actually good business. And one major takeaway is that the best way to bake purpose into the organization is the leadership, or the leader's embodiment of it. So I think leaders should stand up for this. They should embody it and not just talk about it. And then you start baking this purpose-led initiative within the organizational DNA. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Omar, as well.
From my side, yes, I would just like to a very small closing as well within the impact strategy. So it's just a small number that we'd like to share with the audience is impact investing, first point in 2007, which it's expected to reach to $1 trillion in 2020. So we can all imagine what can impact investing can do. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, hello? Absolutely, we can hear you. Yes.
I got tonight. Sorry, I got another line. So yeah, thank you very much, Farida. It's been a true pleasure to be here and with the audience, and Mohammed as well. It's a true honor that what you guys are working on, and hopefully we can get connected with each other and see each other in different webinars and different forums in the future, inshallah.
Fantastic. To close the session, after you switch off from the session, what will happen is you will be taken to a little survey. It will take you 3 minutes. What we are trying to do from a Tharawat perspective is we want to try to take the pulse of the priorities and the concerns of family businesses. So we would really appreciate it if all of you could just take 2-3 more minutes after this session. You will get the link the moment we log off, and just give us a sentiment of how you think the situation is going, and then we will share that report, and we will try to do that report more often so that we all get a bit of more insight where everybody stands, and we can compare ourselves with our peers as well. So on behalf of Tharawat, once again, Omar, Mohammed, thank you so much for inspiring us, and to our audience, thank you so much for spending this time with us.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.